welcome back to the CEO Pulse podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. We are back on another Mindset Mondays with my co-host, Justin Thorstad. Oh yeah, I'm getting better at those sound effects.
You are. I'm
I am
impressed.
telling you.
Yeah. It's progress.
It's progress. The topic for today is going to be the victim versus the responsible mentality. Okay, what is your mindset triggering at a subconscious level? How are you handling the situations that come at you? Are you dealing with them from a responsible mentality, or are you just falling back and being the victim to the situations that come across? Okay, that's very important to be aware of, right? And understand what our default actions or reactions are to that kind of stuff.
Totally. Well, and I think it's
take
also
it away.
important to identify what do we mean by victim consciousness versus responsible perspective. And so basically my definition of victim of consciousness is looking at the outside world, the lens in which you view things, your perception is it's not my fault.
Right.
I'm powerless and I'm not a creator. I'm just a victim to circumstances. So fundamentally, my conditions, circumstances, and environment are running me. They're dictating how I show up, what do I avoid from, what do I deflect. It's not my fault. Someone's doing it to me. It's the market. It's the team that's not supporting me. Everything that's the cause of my failure or lack of success is external. It's outside of me. That's victim consciousness. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum is responsible. Now, I don't mean responsible as in like it's your fault or you're to blame for any shortcomings. Just simply put, responsible is the ability to respond. Break the word down. Responsibility. Response, ability to respond. And so I don't care if it is your business, your marriage, or whatever relationship you have with a significant other, with your kids, all around you. Just take a look at next time that you think it's something external or it's their fault and you're wanting to point the finger, just ask yourself one simple question. Where's my 1% responsibility in this? Because if you're willing to identify that and take a look at it and own it as, yep, I showed up this way, it's going to lead to 2% and 10%. And pretty soon, if you're willing to go there, you have complete ownership of the end result. Because think about it. If you've got a victim consciousness, you're viewing everything as it's not my fault. That means fundamentally you're powerless. You have no ability to transcend, transform, change the situation. Whereas on the responsibility, like, how can I respond differently to this situation? How can I respond to this market? How can I respond to my honey? How can I respond to my kids? How can I be different with it? And so really it's a progression of awareness of self on how you're showing up and how you're being. And maybe it is me. Because if it is you, that should be really exciting news because that means you have the full ability to change everything.
Right.
And so the only way to get to full responsible consciousness is to take ultimate ownership of everything. Again, not fault or blame, but just the ability to respond differently, and I get to own how I show up differently.
Yeah, I think it's important to also highlight that that it doesn't matter, right? A situation is coming at you. It doesn't matter what the situation was caused by. If it was one of your actions, somebody else's actions, responsibility also encompasses the emotional responsibility.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to understand how we are reacting to everything that comes our way, right?
Yeah, and is it a reaction or is it a response?
Exactly.
Right? Because those are coming from two different places of being.
Yeah.
Emotionally speaking. Absolutely.
Yeah, reaction can be something, for example, we saw it last night, right, at the awards. Last night, Will Smith just went apeshit on Chris Rock and then slapped him. Yeah. But that's a reaction. That's a reaction. He got triggered by some comments, and the situation was irrelevant, right? If it's messed up or not, that's irrelevant. The thing to highlight is the responsibility of what's happening at an emotional level, right?
Inside.
Are we owning that? Are we giving ourselves the spot check? Or at least just that little bit amount of space to ask ourselves the question: is this, am I reacting out of an ego response, or am I really thinking and processing this? That's responsibility. That's emotional responsibility.
Yeah,
would you put yourself in the spot where you're understanding at a deeper level where your actions are coming from, right? How is that triggering your thoughts? How is it triggering your emotions? Is it making your blood boil? If so, why, right? Is it coming from a space of ego? Is it something that's really detrimental and whatnot? But really taking the little bit of a window there to process and then take action responsibly, right?
Absolutely.
Over
Yeah.
your emotions. It may seem like it's impossible to do, but when you process stuff from an awareness standpoint, I mean, it's very doable. Actually, taking control of your emotional triggers.
It is. Well, and I think what you said is so profound too, Raf, is that it's the situation happens and it triggers something inside.
Right.
Giving yourself a minute to go, wait a sec.
Yep.
Give myself a couple seconds to process
Yeah.
this. And you'd be surprised at how fast your brain can work, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like our last episode, it's that fear, like who's running the show, right? It's like fear is a reaction, but courage is a decision, right? Like anytime
Yeah.
you react, that's innate. It's just something that you're used to. It's familiar, so much so that it's a habit and just happens in an instant. Whereas taking a moment to stop and say, okay, how do I desire to respond to the situation is responsible. Yeah, because what is my come from? What is the highest and best end result? What do I want to have happen next? And you know, an easy one on this for you entrepreneurs is the market. Like our market right now, let's take the real estate market as an example.
Yeah.
You know, people got to remember, markets are cyclical. They go up, they go sideways, they go down, they do all kinds of funny things, and they're always changing. It doesn't stay the same forever, clearly. Yeah. And so the market's up right now. People are making money hands over fist. What happens when it stabilizes and goes down? And I'm not saying a correction. I'm not saying it's going to crash. I'm not predicting. I'm not giving financial advice. What I'm saying is the environment will change, just like seasons.
Yeah.
And so how are you preparing yourself for what's to come next? Because you don't know what's coming next. Like, how do you study something that hasn't happened yet? The future,
Yeah.
right? And so are you being responsible with your money? Because most people right now, like you talked about your students that made that big chunk of money, right?
Yeah.
Some people, when the environment's doing great and there's plenty of money to be made, they start spending more money. And they're not responding to the environment of, oh, look at all these gains. I get to reinvest into other things. I get to, like, stockpile my savings.
Yep.
I get to build cash reserves so that when things change, I can weather the storm. And that gives me time to adjust my sales to the new environment, right? So it's just like I remember back when the market crashed, 2006, 2007, like the landscape changed. And a lot of people got out of the business.
Yeah.
Well, that was victim. Oh, look what happened to the market. It's not me. No, motherfucker, it is you. And how are you going to be different with it?
Yeah.
Right? So then we got into short sales and REOs, real estate owned by the bank, and just adjust your sales to the landscape. So you can either let those conditions, circumstances, and environment run you, or you can control them. And it all comes down to ultimate ownership and responsibility of how am I being right now with the situation, and how can I be different with it? You got to adjust your sales to the winds when the winds shift, man.
Absolutely, man. Are we giving away? Are we giving away our personal power? I think that's huge, right? When somebody or something or some situation or is taking up headspace and it's blocking you from taking action, from living your best life, from getting to that next level, from making an impact, from empowering, from whatever your purpose might be, you're giving that something so much power. It's insane, right?
And it's so easy to do.
Exactly.
So easy.
It's so easy to do. When you're aware of it, though, you can take it back, right? So it's about the personal power. Are you acting from a space of one of the principles? I have 3 principles in my companies. One of them is extreme ownership, and I totally took that from what's his name, Jocko, the book, Extreme Ownership.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
Hey,
it's
rip off and duplicate.
yeah, exactly.
Proven models.
Yeah. So it's the second principle that we have in my company. It's extreme ownership, but it's coming from that space. Extreme ownership, and when I talk about it with my team, is it's not just on okay, what's in my lane? Okay, what are my tasks? Extreme ownership over 10 tasks that I have on a daily basis. Yeah, I mean that goes along into the bucket. But what about emotional intelligence? What about going above and beyond and then doing what you think should be done to improve somebody else's lane? You know what I mean? If you can come in and help, I mean, you're taking extreme ownership over that particular situation. When we walk around and assume extreme ownership about everything that's happening around us, and I know like it can be a mind dump, right? But it's when you assume extreme ownership about the situations that are coming at you on a regular basis. It doesn't matter if it's the jerk that flipped you off because he was in a hurry and on the freeway or whatever, right? You can get pissed off and then have 30 minutes of sourness, or you can just sit there and then take extreme ownership of your emotional space and say, hey, listen, I don't know what that guy is going through, bless him. I hope everything turns out well and he can do better with his day.
Yeah.
And you go on and you go for, continue with your day, right? But that's taking extreme ownership. So extreme ownership isn't just, checking the do's and the tasks list, the to-do lists that we have on a daily basis. Is really coming into everything that we do from a personal power standpoint. And how can I improve, my life? How can I walk to that next level and then do better with everything else that's around me as I go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and so again, the victim consciousness is always such a powerless state, and so as an example, so when I was developing a real estate team and even early stages of my brokerage, I always take a look at my KPIs, what are expenses, what's revenue, and therefore what's profit. And anytime I see profit dip and sales are going down, expenses going up, it's easy for me to naturally go into, well, the agents need to sell more. And every single time, man, quickly shift. Whoa. It's me.
Yeah.
Ultimate ownership. Because at the end of the day, that profitability is my result.
Yep.
Right? And leaders create results through others. So anytime I see that number dip, I get to take a look in the mirror of like, why? How is it me? And so again, not fault or blame, but just the ability to respond to the situation. How can I be different with the situation? Well, Justin, turns out that profitability was extremely high. Things are going super well. And I decided to do what? Coast with it. Yep. Instead of foot on the gas, focus, and keep the needle moving forward. But it's like, things are going well. Let me shift my attention to another project and breathe some life into that. Nothing wrong with that. But did I take my eye off the ball? Yes. Okay, so whose result is that? If I'm taking complete ownership 100%. Because at the end of the day, pointing the finger gets you nowhere. I would actually challenge that and say it makes things worse.
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does because you're relinquishing. Every time you just sit there and then don't think proactively about anything or something that can be done, you're setting yourself, you're stepping backwards.
Totally. If nothing else, energetically.
Yeah, exactly. If nothing else, you're just sitting there, you're kind of moping over your failure, as opposed to understanding, learning, growing from it, and leaving that victim mentality aside. Right? There's so much we can do if we just become proactive at the stuff that we're pursuing.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about big goals here. I'm not just talking about the whole entrepreneur onset and tackling on the world and all that kind of stuff. On the daily, man, just taking responsibility and not being a victim to how many times have you been around somebody who gets pissed off because their coffee was made wrong? How many times has that, have you seen somebody, and I've walked away salty from just, I don't know, an order got messed up at fucking Chick-fil-A or something. And like next thing you know, I'm salty for the next 15 minutes. Like, come on. It's crazy. You don't know what's happening. I mean, it may be incompetence, it may very well be incompetence on the other side.
Could be.
At the end of the day, the situation does not matter, right? It's extreme ownership of the personal power that we have as individuals.
Yeah.
And what can we come in and do about that?
Exactly.
You either go back and then have a conversation about it, or if you're not going to talk, if you're not going to, take action about it, walk away, but don't walk away, salty. Just
don't take that home with you.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Now you're going to fester on it.
Exactly.
But
move on.
I think the beautiful opportunity with the responsible lens in which you view your entire reality is this. When you go victim to a circumstance, a condition, environment, a person, whatever it is, and you point the finger that the problem is something outside of me, it's external.
Right.
You automatically shut down all possibilities of rectifying that. Really. Because you say, I'm powerless, it's because of them, and I'm not in control. Yeah. Which is such an utter bullshit. Because the fact of the matter is, if you look at it through the lens of, okay, how can I own this? How was this result part of my creation? Then you get to take a look at the awesome potential of, learning opportunities. I didn't show up as I could have in this area. I didn't say that thing that I wanted to say that I held back because I had some fear running me. I didn't want them to get pissed off, or I thought something bad was going to happen if I opened my mouth. If you take a look at all those opportunities of where I could have shown up as a bigger, better version of myself, how I could have been more powerful, more present, more engaged, more attention, more focused, then you get to take a look at, okay, now I get to go to work on these things and I get to practice being that elevated state with these things. I get to go clean it up.
Right.
and what might happen with that type of perspective. But again, it goes back to complete ownership, ultimate ownership, that every result that I have is mine, and I have the ability to respond to it.
Yeah. Crazy thing too, like that's the structure side of taking responsibility, right? Not being a victim. Now, when it comes to, and I'm gonna get a little woo woo here, but when it comes to universal power and just flow, when you put yourself in a state of victimhood, just bad shit seems to flow. Right?
Compound, yeah.
It compounds, it happens, you hit yourself on the toe, and then fucking you cut your nails wrong, stupid things like that just seem to make it all worse.
Spiral down.
Yeah, it spirals down because you put yourself in that state of energy. Now, when you take your personal power with you, and you apply and you leave that bad vibe, where it belongs, which is outside of your space, things seem to just, line up and then fix themselves out. I don't know how they pan out, well, but I just know they do, right?
Hey, yeah, well, it's a law of polarity, right?
Yeah.
You know how it works
There you go
so
with your
well and
smart stuff.
effortless when you start spiraling down.
Yeah.
Well, the law of polarity exists and says the opposite must be true too, and you start spiraling up. It's that flow state.
Yeah.
Right? So just understanding that it's me energetically that's causing the direction of this energy to flow. The question is which way and how can I respond differently to it to make a shift happen? No, it's not easy. Very simple explanation we just gave, but now go implement that. Go integrate it in your beingness and tell me how you're doing. But anything you practice, you can master.
Yeah.
Right? And so are you willing to practice is really the key question.
Right.
Are you willing to take that ownership when that anger, that frustration, that doubt, that worry, that fear, that victimness of it's not my fault starts to come up? Are you willing to catch it and shift it?
Yeah, there's so many things that play into that space, right? I mean, we start talking about our history, and for example, if you're going to tell yourself a story about being a victim, right? Or you want to be, if we want to be a victim, we're going to be a victim, right? If you want to be a victim about any situation, you're going to start telling yourself a story, right? And this can happen by default, or shit, may happen intentionally. I don't know. Some people like that, but it's you're going to start to process this story and then go through your past, right, to justify your present, or even worse, justify the future, right? Now, one thing that I think needs to happen in order to let go of that victim mentality is really put a halt on it and understand that the past does not determine the future. Our past does not determine our future. Where we come from does not determine where we're going. We can make a cut in time, slice it right now, and decide where we want to go from there, right?
Any moment.
Whenever those thoughts about our past behaviors or history, how we grew up, the skills, the opportunities that we had, or the anything that's victimhood related from the past, we can make a choice and see it, right? Contemplate it, understand that it's there, it happened, it's part of a road that was traveled, right? But it doesn't define the person that we are becoming. Every day we are becoming.
Moment by
Right?
moment, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the people that are identifying with their past really like, well, you don't understand, Raph. I can't do this because of what happened to me 10 years ago. It's like, that's the epitome of victim. Because, what the hell does the past have anything to do with this moment in time right now?
Yep.
Besides nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so understanding that and making that choice, that conscious decision that was then, here I am now, that's responsible.
Yeah.
This next moment is my choice. I get to respond to it how I decide. And that's about being a conscious creator of your reality instead of a spectator.
Conscious creator of your reality. I love that.
Well, all my coaching programs is
love
moving
that.
from spectator to creator.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. Victims are spectators.
Yeah.
They're in the stands. They're the hecklers. They're the ones pointing the fingers. Oh, they should have thrown the ball this way. Oh, he should have done this. They should have done that. It's like, get your ass on the field
Exactly.
and take ownership of the result then. You know what I mean?
Start playing, yeah.
Yeah, and it's no different than in your life.
Yeah.
Get on the field, get into action, take ownership for those results, and take those beautiful mistakes in that people call failures.
Yeah.
I look at them as mistakes, man, because how the hell are you going to practice differently, learn differently than if you don't make mistakes, right? You look at professional athletes, what do? They record their performances so they can see where they made mistakes so they can elevate and improve.
Right.
But that takes like an ultimate amount of self-love to want to elevate your beingness.
Well, that, right? And then understanding where your ego stands. Two things that I wanted to mention was, one, the historical track record that we have, right? That it's a fallacy. It tells us that we're going to be victims, or it tells us that we're going to be successes. I think, I call bullshit on both of those,
Yeah.
because we can, again, make a slice in time and then decide what we want to become. We have the power to do that kind of stuff. Now, two is understanding where your ego stands. If your ego is ego is not your amigo. Number one, right? One of my favorite
Catchphrase.
phrases. Yeah,
Your ego is not your amigo.
Yeah, I picked that up from a book which I read. It had a lot of words and letters.
Did it have like pop-ups too?
Yeah,
A lot of pictures.
They cut them off. Because I read books with a lot of letters and words. But but the ego, but understanding where your ego is steering you to. I think that's important, right?
Yeah.
When we become victims, psychologically or in thought process, when we become victims, where does your ego stand? When you're triggered, when you react, when you decide to just lay down and die, and not do anything about any particular situation, is that your ego, just taking over, right? Is that telling you, because ego can be, narcissistic, or it can be extremely, extremely weak and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? It's understanding where you stand, right, in terms of ego and overcoming that second voice that we all have.
Yes.
That second, just level of consciousness that's telling us on a regular basis, you're not good enough. You're not gonna make it. You're not. It's self-doubt. It's all that stuff that creeps in, right? When faced with a situation where you might be a victim or you might be a victor, I think ego is going to determine like which path you go on.
It is, and ego, in my opinion, is nothing more than a bundle of thoughts and feelings and stories and beliefs that are unobserved in your mind.
Right.
Right. But once you shine the light on the darkness, you drive that out. Once you become aware of those redundant, habitual ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving, you're becoming aware of it and driving it out.
Yep.
And so, listen, we've all had trauma in childhood. And I don't care how bad you think it was. It's what happened inside of you. You know what I mean? Like, I could spill out my whole trauma from childhood, and it was pretty damn bad. And I could talk to somebody else, and the worst thing that they experienced was, at the age of 7, mom and dad divorced, and that was the end of their world. Yeah. And I could be like, that was nothing compared to what I experienced. But to them, what
context.
They internalized was
Context.
a level 10.
Yep.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what happened. We all have that trauma.
Yeah.
And to that, and people utilize that through victim consciousness of, you don't understand. I can't go start this business because of what happened. It's like, and yeah, that happened. And what in the fuck does that have to do with right now, this moment, and moving forward? Besides nothing.
Yeah.
Like, so what? Now what? Like, let's get on with it.
There's thresholds, and I agree. Like, at the end of the day, you have to assume you got to have the tenacity to take action, move forward. I think that it doesn't matter what threshold you're at. And when I say thresholds, I mean, we all have emotional thresholds, we have financial thresholds, we have friendship thresholds, and those are just points to where we get to, or we get triggered by anything that happens within that threshold. For example, what you were talking about, right? Somebody who had a hard childhood may have an emotional threshold that's higher, and they can handle a lot more shit, right? Than somebody who had a very nice childhood, then boom, they get hit by real life all of a sudden, and it may seem to somebody else who went through bad stuff, it may seem that they're drowning in a cup of water, right?
Yeah.
But their threshold is different.
Totally.
Regardless of where you stand there and your capacity to deal with life and circumstances, regardless of what that is, I think at the end of the day, like the ability to move forward really comes down to that personal tenacity. And again, there's going to be a threshold for that. Your personal tenacity may seem weak to somebody else, right? But it's simply because we have different thresholds of coping with things, with understanding, things. Moving forward, though, however, that concept is like, I don't think you can challenge it. Like, you gotta have the tenacity to want to get up and
and so not challenging, but okay. So how do I work with my thresholds, right?
Yeah.
Well, again, with the victim lens, it's like, well, It's not my fault. You can't expect this because of what's happened to me or because what so-and-so is still doing to me today or did yesterday or what I think they're going to do tomorrow. Versus the responsible lens of how can I respond differently to this? Okay, how can I elevate my threshold? Right? And then not only that, but the responsible lens of it is me, ultimate ownership. I get to decide. I get to move forward. Now you become what I think is one of the most incredible skills known to mankind, resourceful.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because financial thresholds, like people say, well, I can't start that business. I don't have the money. Who the fuck said you need money?
Yeah.
At least who said you need your money, right? Could you borrow money? Could you raise capital? Could you find it? Because it exists. Partner up, right? Like there's all kinds of solutions out there because every single problem you have due to your threshold, by definition, if it's a problem, that means it has a solution. There's another end to it.
Yeah. So this is one example, right, that I think is very common, especially with newer entrepreneurs, people jumping into, the space where they want to build their own reality, right? And it's, I can't do it because I don't have the money. I can't, you know what? I have this great idea and I'd be a millionaire in a year, but I can't do it because I don't have 100K. Or I can't do it because I don't have 50K. I can't do it because I have a 9 to 5. You pick, right? There's something, the range is so...
all kinds of stories.
Yeah, all kinds of stories, right? But when you go back to that space of victim versus responsibility, right? If you take responsibility of what you want, if you take responsibility of the life that you want to create and the life that you want to live, you're going to become resourceful.
Absolutely.
Right? You're going to partner up. So you can take it as from the victim mentality, you'll see somebody just kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall here and there a little bit, and then it just eventually falls off the wall and then nothing happens, right? That's a victim mentality. It's somebody who's just kind of fiddle fucking with the idea of becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, not committed yet. Haven't decided.
Committing, hadn't decided. And that intertwines with victim mentality. Right? If you're not going to assume the responsibility of taking action and actually getting a grip of the level of life that you want to live and taking those actions behind that and becoming resourceful to make that happen, you're playing in the victim space. You're playing in the victim field.
Yeah.
All right. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of stuff that happens, but consistency and persistency really, inevitably, I think they're gonna take you to that space where you either meet somebody, you find a resource, you find different ways of doing things. Shit, new software pops up all the time, but makes things cheaper, right? But if you put the time in, cheaper and more efficient. But if you take the time to let me backtrack. If you take the responsibility of looking into it and really, going after what you want to get, where you want to get, and the impact that you want to have, it's going to happen.
Yeah, well, it's just a simple mentality of I have the ability to take another step. Well, what's the next step after that? I don't know. Let me just take this one step. And lo and behold, you take that step, and the next one unfolds, the next one unfolds.
Exactly.
You just keep moving forward with that persistence, that tenacity, that desire. You know it's going to be made manifest if you just don't quit.
Yep.
So.
Just don't quit. Victim versus responsible mindset. Got no quit. I got no quit in me. Do you have quit in you?
No,
I got
never.
no quit. Yeah.
Never. But you know what? It really is fundamentally one of the pillars of all of my successes is because to me, I'm not a failure. And I'm not a failure because to me, failure is only one of two things, not getting started or quitting.
Yeah.
And I got no quit.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. What's the worst that can happen, right? Like I was thinking about this a little while ago, but it's I think one of the wisest things ever said was by Chow from The Hangover. But did you die?
Yeah, no, man. Well, we talked about that in the last session, right? Like, if you can come to grips with your worst fears and accept that as a potential reality, man, you're no longer a hostage to it.
Yeah. Exactly. So, Justin, where can somebody get a hold of you if they want to reach out? And
anywhere on social media, Justin Thorstad or justinthorstad.com. Of course, my cell phone. Send me a message. Give me a call, 602-348-8534.
Boom! And you can find me at Rafael Cortez, CEO, on all social medias. Check out the YouTube channel. If you're listening to the podcast, please do us a favor, rate it. And then if you're not subscribed, please do. It helps us spread the word, picks up the algorithms on all social media platforms, and we can go out to more people. So our intention here is to really create awareness and put more value out there. And the only way we can do that is if you guys give us a hand and help us out. So make sure that you subscribe, like, and share. And follow on social media at Rafael Cortez CEO. That's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, MySpace. I got MySpace. Yes, the tweets,
All the things.
the tweeter, the bird one. Yeah. So we'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay focused. You got this.